Was WE the team that had Messiah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was. I think he was one of the first League players that ever like had a play named after him. Because
Messiah?
yeah, Messiah. Do you know that one?
No, I don't.
This might have been before your time, but it was.
I don't
This was
recognize it at
early
all.
League. It was so mind blowing. What you would do is you would alt in his TF and it instantly zone you.
Sonya? Oh,
Yeah.
so you like cancel the ulti, right?
No,
Well,
it's a
it was
bait,
just
basically.
like everybody would be aiming their abilities to where
Yeah,
TF's
yeah.
gonna land, and most TFs would like land and try to throw a gold card.
Yeah, yeah.
But Messiah would just zone you right away, and it was just so mind blowing at the
okay.
time.
Yeah, so basically like you bait out everyone's ult and they're all going in, and then the TF comes out of Zonya's, and then your entire team
That was
just
mind-blowing
kills
at the
people.
time?
At the time?
Yeah,
Yeah,
these
just
are
like the
like
insect
next
was
level
mind-blowing.
season 3 mechanics right here.
Yeah, this was unheard of.
Yeah, everything I drive brand new. Yeah, everything inside brand new. Be careful with my ride is brand new. Everything outside brand new. Yo, we ready, pull up, it's over. Y'all know what's up when we roll up. Y'all know what's up when we roll up. We ready, pull up, it's over.
Do you feel like your team style changes under different coaches? Because now you've worked with 2 different head coaches within the same split.
Okay, so I don't think our style really changed since Cold was our strategic coach and Jat was the head coach. Jat not being here, it kind of feels like someone's missing because he was really good at facilitating the conversations. He's really good like deciphering what the actual points were in the debates and the conversations and like pointing them out early. But definitely with him not here, it's like kind of feels bad because like he was nice to have around. It definitely like blows a bit.
I think it was because Udyr got nerfed.
Yeah.
He said, I joined the balance team to buff Udyr. I coached and I first picked Udyr, and my baby got nerfed. I don't want to do this anymore.
It's just gone after that. Nope.
Yeah.
So he's going to go back to the balance team.
And buff you
rebuff
again.
him.
Yeah,
and then
buff
he'll
Udyr
be with you
again.
by the end of the
cycle
season.
Come back.
continues.
It's full circle.
Yeah.
I think that's what really happened.
Yeah, I agree.
He's got to cast for a while in between, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and then go back.
Maybe he'll buff Skarner and then come back to Skarner's
He
meta.
doesn't care about Skarner. He just cares about Udyr.
Really? Only you do?
Yeah, that was his thing.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
in season 1.
Okay, I wasn't even born yet. Like,
Oh my God, were you literally not born?
no, I was born.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's not
What?
10 years old.
I was like, wait, hold on.
That's cool.
Something I would love to see, this has been my dream idea for a tournament, is you have a tournament where it's like every team has to play on like the different season patches. So it's like you play on season 1, you play on season 2, and it's like the same teams playing throughout these different seasons. And you just try to see like how much did the game change and how much did just the player understanding of the game change? Because if you could go back then, like how good would you be compared to what they were? It's fun to think about. I don't know if we'd ever be able to see that, but
And you have to do it on the pre-visual update Summoner's Rift too.
Oh, that's...
You gotta
God.
fully commit.
That
There-
thing
there-
is
there's
so
probably way more
difficult to
changes.
look at.
there's way more changes than anyone would think about. Like, people always ask me, like, Meteos, would you go back to like season 3, season 4? Because that was when I was winning stuff, and I'm like, hell no. Like, that's when Aegis was in the game, and that, I mean, I guess it is kind of in the game now with Locket, but it's to a lesser
Yeah.
extent. But back then, it was legit. Like, you rush this item. If you got it before the other team, run to Dragon. They can't fight you. No, that was dark times in League of Legends.
As a support, you're running around with literally boots and wards.
Yeah.
That's
30
it.
pink wards.
No money. One of my first esport events I watched was season 3 Worlds or something. It's like I remember there's like this guy playing Jarvan, and he had a really cool skin. And I'm like, wow, this champion looks so cool. I want to buy this champion. But I didn't realize it was a skin. I bought the champion. I'm like, why does mine look so ugly?
Wait, was it Fnatic Jarvan?
No, it was the Warring Kingdoms Jarvan.
Oh, Warring
That
Kingdoms,
one.
yeah.
That was
at the
out in
ti-
season 3?
I think so. I mean,
Wow.
it looks so cool. I'm like, wow, I want to
Yeah.
play
I
this
know, it
champion.
seems like, oh, that's a recent skin. It's not.
Yeah.
Man, League time is so hard to think about. It's like, didn't that champion just come out yesterday? No, Meteos, that was 7 years ago. It's like, oops.
Kelsey, how did you and Emily meet?
I think it was season 4. We were both working for Paravine, and I did a spot on GG Chronicle, which I know is where you did a lot of your early writing.
Yeah, so that's when I knew of her. My reaction was like, wow, it's Kelsey Moser. I knew her as the LPL person. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, this person knows so much more about the game than I do. So she asked me because that was post Korean exodus of the 2014-2015 offseason. And so all the LCK players are OGN Champions players were going from there to mainland China. And so, yeah, I was tapped just because I knew about those players. And that's actually how I started following LPL. The secret is that I actually followed LCK first.
Oh.
Which now, to the extent that I talk about the LPL, I don't think people realize it. But that's why I'm a KT Rolster fan. That's the only team I'm like attached to emotionally.
I still think of you as like the LCK person, and I don't know, yeah, because it was just I was weirdly obsessed with LPL when no one in the English-speaking community seemed to care. So it's kind of my claim to fame.
Where did that come from?
I was a Fnatic fan, and then they lost at the greatest tournament ever, right? Which
IPL 5.
Yeah. So then WE. So I went back and started watching old VODs from even season 1, and a lot of stuff like that, just to try to get to know like how the players played and all that stuff. And it was just really fun because they didn't play like any other major region at the time. There was the meme, I think at season 3 Worlds, where they showed the map for every other region, the map in China, and the tower was gone, right? And that was the joke because they tower dove all the time. So yeah.
There's not nearly enough tower dives in LCS.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How do we foster players and make it acceptable for them to make mistakes when we know we're supposed to be going by the book and being like, okay, like now you reset because this objective's up, and et cetera, because League of Legends has been around long enough that there is a playbook for that. And I think it's really interesting to watch someone like Danny come up, for example, and just be like completely unapologetic about how aggressive he's playing. Like, I really appreciate that because I think a lot of times when players are making the jump, they lose some of that like proactivity because they're scared to make mistakes.
Yeah.
So like last year, I guess I was better at not dying because I would just like focus on what the enemy can do to me. Because I guess I didn't really care about pushing my limits and stuff as much. This year, jumped it down a few times.
Was that the one where you jumped into 3 people at the blue entrance?
Yes.
That one was so funny.
Yeah, actually it was funny. I literally almost had a panic attack. I'm like, what am I doing? Like afterwards, like.
Was it a misclick or like
Oh, no,
what was the thought going into that one? Because I'm curious. From the outside, it looked like just
Okay.
like checked your PayPal kind of deal.
Yeah. So what happened was I think I hit one of them like 2 times my E. So if you proc 4 times, you get a jump reset.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna jump in and jump out again. But I didn't think about like the Thresh hook to stop me.
It just depends on what kind of risk are you going for? How do you weigh the payoff, right? Like how likely is the payoff versus how unlikely, and then what your overall risk tolerance is. But in general, like when stuff goes wrong at the end, we a little bit about the Malphite thing. It's like, it sounds stupid, but when I was looking at the play, like if I had gone in just a little bit earlier, it would have been really sick, right? But that's the kind of mentality I'd rather have. Like I'd rather you go for the Malphite angle, and then try to do it again next time, but do it right, than say, oh, I should just not go in on Trisonic. Like I always say, when I'm scouting Academy and Amateur, I want you to be able to play fights right? Like just have good hands, because everything else in the game is literally teachable, right?
When a player doesn't immediately just like go to the moon in terms of their play, how do you then evaluate the quality of that player and whether they should be given a second chance?
When I went to 100 Thieves, it's like I want to develop players that you guys want to start for LCS, and that was the goal. And I didn't think it would happen right away, but that's because the circumstances in which it's happened, and maybe Tactical can think about it too, is it's like, oh, the team is not doing well. What should we do, right? And that's kind of the circumstance that has happened for 3 of the rookies that have started and that I've coached, like Poom, Fakon Saligo. And end of the season, they end up in Academy again. And rookies debut under circumstances where they're expected to fix things from a fan perspective, even if the team doesn't come in and say, oh, we're not expecting you to fix anything, we're giving you a shot just because, something has to change.
NA is in such a weird point, in my opinion, for rookies to debut. The community is gonna massacre you for every single mistake. And I know this happens in other regions as well, but it seems amplified in North America in a way that's like very weird, because with a lot of like Chinese or South Korean pros coming up, I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that they've been on like trainee rosters for a really long time. And there's this weird idea that players just like debut out of nowhere, right? Like I saw people saying this about Jackie Love, where they're like, wow, like he came out of nowhere and he won Worlds like right out of solo queue. And I'm like, he was an IG trainee since he was, I think, 12 or 13. 14 at the latest. Like people knew of him. He already had like a fan club.
They started him young over there.
Yeah, like before he ever debuted in LPL, he had like a full fan club. He had like supporters. People knew of him. People were already talking about him in scrims. And that's how like ahead other infrastructures are compared to North America. And fans are like equally unforgiving of players that come in. And particularly when it's something where you're expected to come in and like fix the team, that's just such an awkward position to be in.
Spica, his debut was like that. Like he was probably one of the biggest cases of that. Like he's comes into a totally dysfunctional team. He's put on Sejuani with no resources every game. It's just like, I felt so bad for him because like, obviously it wasn't a good performance by him, but it's like, show me somebody who's gonna do well in those circumstances. He was so dead on arrival that it wasn't even funny, but he's bounced back great.
I did play with Spica a long time ago.
Really?
Yes. Basically, sorry, Ming, if you see this, but basically, what happened was I remember we were playing on team. It was end of a season, I forgot. He lost Challenger the last day of the season. He got really tilted, disappeared for like a year or so. And then I was wondering, like, I wonder how he's doing. So I click his Discord profile, because, you know, it was really common for people to link their league accounts. And I see Speak. I'm like, holy shit, that's him. The guy who went missing. And then I'm like, he's back. He's back. And then actually, I did play with Kumo as well.
Okay.
And one of the teams, his name was Weeaboo Riven.
Nice.
Of course.
Before.
Yeah.
Actually, I did play a team with Artemis. Connor.
Oh, okay,
We
yeah.
played at DreamHack Montreal. We got second
was a
place.
player?
Yeah, he was a player.
Yeah, it was-
Really?
I memed him because he was Diamond 4 at the time. Everyone called him D4timus.
Playing Spica this weekend, do you feel like a rivalry with him or a need to beat him because you used to be on a team? Or is it all love?
It's all love. We meme each other all the time. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm playing a Spica. I have to try extra hard to win. Like, I'm going to sweat this game so hard. It's just like, I just find it like extra banter. We always type in the pre-game lobby.
Is that still common, the pregame lobby chat? Because I always felt like that was a ritual for the game. It was like everybody did it. Does every team still do it, or is it like some teams don't?
I mean, at least I do it. I tap to every team, and I just stare at, when I'm on stage, I stare at the enemy team. Just even during
You try
draft
to make
phase.
them laugh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Like,
so
for
good.
example, like, if we ban top laner, I'll stare at the top laner and just be smiling. Like, you know, it's like an ego thing. Like, oh, wow, he banned a champion. There's one team that didn't look back at me. I was disappointed. It was 100 Thieves
Ooh.
during draft. Like, because every team I'm just staring at them, and they always notice every time except for 100 Thieves. So they're really boring.
Pull up and jump out like jet boys in different car. Every day, pick your poison. Take a ride through the city. Today's gorgeous. Hit the gas. Yeah, it might make you nauseous.
Funny enough, you know, there was that CLG piece that came out earlier, which was one of the worst things that's probably ever been released by a team.
That was so bad. And like, you have to separate like making it so that you have content that is accurately reflecting like what is going on in the team. And then also like not like having such little empathy for your players that you end up releasing it like that under a sponsored Twitter post.
Yeah. Also, I mean, we were talking about this earlier. It's just also bad management, whether it's on or off camera, to tell your players, hey, one of you or the whole team might get benched, you know?
But we're not going to tell you
But,
which one.
Yeah, we're not going to tell you if it's going to happen. We're not going to tell you who it happened to, so.
They said in the video, well, if we had gone 3-0 this weekend, we wouldn't have to do this, but because we went 1-2, we have to make some changes. And I sit there and I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
Is this, that makes no sense. Why are you so result driven that, like, LCS games are such a minor part of how good your team is. Like, so many factors go into it. Like, who are you playing that weekend? Did the other team play well? You know, was there some draft issue? Did some random thing happen that, you know, affected the result of the game? And so if you base your entirety of like, let's change everything. Because I think what a lot of teams don't consider is when you change a player, it's not like just, okay, all these problems the former player had are magically gone and our team is better. It's like the cost of subbing someone in who has no synergy with your team is so high, but it seems to be completely overlooked just because, well, the player in has a problem, the player not in doesn't have that problem. This is good. It's just
It's like
ridiculous.
a Band-Aid fix, like temporary. if
That's,
anything.
I don't know how your experience has been, but in my mind, like that's been LCS so much lately. It's just teams are so focused on let's win this next weekend as opposed to let's just learn how to play League of Legends as a team. Let's be a good team.
One of the best ways to make your players play worse is to hinge their entire self-esteem on whether or not they win or lose, because they have no way of otherwise gauging anything. They don't know if they're getting better. They don't know if they're improving. It's like you go 0-3 or you go 1-2. It's like, yeah, but our Rift Herald setup that game was really sick, so we're getting better. And that's like the kind of stuff that you can focus on, right? That can change the attitude, and that can keep people positive and focused on improving even when you're doing really, really bad.
People make a mistake in Academy a lot when they're looking at players or when they're looking at teams. It's like, what's more important in Academy, to like win or to provide actionable goals for players so that they can get picked up and actually like grow as people? And I think that a lot of orgs don't do the latter very well.
It's interesting that you say you feel like teams are focused on short-term results right now, because from my perspective, it feels like this is the split where there've been the most moves made for the long term in terms of roster changes, with a lot more focus on Academy. So what's your view on when Academy players get subbed in?
I generally see it as short-term thinking. I think there's some situations where like if a player is just completely dysfunctional, like he has lost all trust in his teammates and vice versa, and he's just playing terribly, like, yeah, you probably have to make a change because that seems beyond repair. But most of the time, I think that players are capable of improving. They're capable of like recognizing mistakes, and just swapping out a player isn't the only way to fix it, because like Academy is great for, a number of reasons, but I also think one of the drawbacks of it is the fact that teams view them as so interchangeable rather than two separate teams. It just creates a really weird dynamic where it's like you're not really just focused on your own team. It's kind of like you're focused on yourself, being like, well, I don't want to be the one who gets sent to Academy.
Sure.
I think there's, because obviously I'm very kind of developmental minded and more forward thinking in that regard. If you have a top LCS team and a top Academy team, and you're not like thinking about, okay, we want to like push our Academy players to the next level with the time that we have, you can frame the connotation as it's more rewards based for these guys are doing really great, and we're still going to go to playoffs with our LCS starting roster, et cetera. Then I think that's something that I think more teams should be doing, stuff like that, because that helps so much for just like longevity of the org. It helps like, I hate to say market value of the player. It helps like the player, the Academy players in general, just feel confident when they eventually do play LCS. So I like to see things like that. So.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that perspective, and I can see where teams are coming from with it. As a player, like as an LCS player, I wouldn't like it, because like being subbed out as a reward for someone else doing well, to me, it feels really weird. I would see it like, if I'm not doing something wrong, why am I being replaced? Like, so that would definitely be my opinion as a player. Like, I don't think many LCS players would like it, but again, I do see where the orgs are coming from with it. So it's just, I think it's just a conflict of interest. Like, both parties won't want the same thing there.
Once you get in as a staff member, that has to be like a logistical nightmare to manage like player expectations. Because if I'm a player, like I'd be pissed.
I always have a hard time believing players when I hear that they like splitting time, because I've never in my life met someone who's like, thank God for that 6-man roster. Like, I was so happy when I got subbed out. Like, I felt no pressure playing in this game knowing there's someone waiting to take my job, like, right backstage.
Yeah, I mean, and I do think there's a difference between, between genuinely loving that I have someone I'm competing with and feeling motivated by it, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like how many times a 6-man roster has like worked out, and I feel like everyone's gonna identify T1 in 2015, but then they lost at MSI to EDG, and then that Worlds they basically just stuck with Faker in the mid lane, and he kind of, if you look at Faker's career, God, he's so good. I know I've ranted to you about this, Kelsey, but like
That's a hot
he
take.
basically like relearned. Yes, it's an extreme hot take. He like relearned how to play mid like that entire summer, which is like so it's actually insane to like think about.
Is there anyone in NA that you play against and you're like, damn, this guy I have a lot to learn from in your role?
Not to learn from, but
Okay.
I think FBI is the only other human in terms of limits, knowledge, and champion micro.
Nice.
Okay.
Not Sen?
He's kind of like a minion hitter.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if he plays Ezreal, like 90% of his kills go to minions, not the enemy champions, like aiming wise. He's like perfect stabilized player,
Okay.
neutralizer player if he wants.
That's actually the massive difference that Double If said about laning against Uzi is that he would, like Double If would think he would go for minions and then he would just go attack him. Like he wouldn't even like be contesting the wave. He would just be contesting Double If himself.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, I think that's like one of the biggest things that I talked to like rookie players about. It's just like you really think it matters if you're getting this last hit when this guy like loses 3
Yes,
XP,
yeah.
right? Like 3 creeps worth of XP. Like they just are just so trained in tunnel vision. Oh, I must get this last hit. I must do it.
You can't, it's so bad to, like, if against good players, if you go one auto down, it's like GG. Lane's over.
Really, if you get one free auto on them,
Yeah, it's over.
is it just because like all of a sudden they can't all in you anymore?
It's because all of a sudden now you're at a 2 HP disadvantage. Just one auto makes a difference.
I think you talked about previous interview about how Core has a way he likes to play the game and he has these rules. Is that something that you feel like the whole team buys into and accepts, or is it one of those things where it's like you guys try to challenge your beliefs on the game and try to like, you know, expand on it?
Like we try to make a balanced decisions all around. Like for example, we don't just force Jensen like, oh, roam right now without giving any context. Like if we could always set up a better timing where we just don't lose as much, but it's the same result, we try to do that. Obviously, it's like a greedier way, so like you need a lot of reps for these kind of things and like seeing the same angles on the map as team. But generally, it's like we try to maximize our advantages without losing anything, kind of. Not just like psycho and commit sometimes. Yeah, that's
go
not
for
us.
Heavy coin flips.
Yeah, we don't do that much.
Sometimes when I watch the game, so I'm like, oh, I wish they would just run it. You know,
Oh, yeah.
I want to see some blood, but for you got to win. So you know,
Yeah, of
obviously.
course.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. I'd say teams having identities is kind of like a double-edged sword because on one hand, it's really good that you have a style that everyone can buy into. For example, like TSM, right? They play PoE on mages. They have Huni just do his thing, and then their bot lane is like just plays to be stable. And you know, I guess last weekend they tried to branch out with like some Lisa in mid and with mixed results. But you know, it's great that you can have a style that works. But then at the same time, when you play against a team and you know exactly what they're going to do, it also makes it worse. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's not. Oh, sorry. I'd say it's not always like complacency. It's also like you keep doing the same thing. It keeps working, and then because of that, you might like not keep up to date on the newer strategies and the newer picks. So like sometimes you might be behind on draft, and you're like, oh, this is working. Just keep doing it, and then all of a sudden, they like enemy team downloads your draft, and then you're just like outdrafted sometimes.
I can think of like multiple Chinese teams where they've picked the same champions for like an entire split. And everyone's like, this team is so good. And then when they get to playoffs, people suddenly miraculously start banning their picks. And then they just drop out of playoffs in the first round.
Sometimes I kind of psych myself out. Like if I know that there's a pick that is really, really important to my team, it's like, we're not picking it all day. We're not doing it for 2 days. No, we're banning it ourselves.
Actually, bringing up the point, it was kind of funny because last year we had Impact, Broxa, Jensen, me, and Core. So pretty sure I could talk about it now, but like in the summer, one of our biggest strengths was Thresh lanes. Like that was like the meta AD carries were like paired with all Thresh, and then in scrimmage we just play Thresh and then just like kill everybody kind of, and then comes playoffs and then we didn't realize how important Thresh was to us until you started banning it. So like a big part of our strategy was win lane, support roams, spread pressure, stabilize map situation. But then teams banned Thresh versus us last year in summer in playoffs, and we're like, oh wait, what do we do now?
I feel like Thresh Lantern is the most overpowered but underrated ability in the game. It changes entirely how you can play. Like all of a sudden plays, when you have a Thresh, it's like you're allowed to walk up to the wave and clear it in their face. And then without Thresh, it's like, wait a minute, like that was a full-on int.
Yeah, not gonna lie, when I first started playing the course, Thresh Lantern was kind of sus, but it's kind of good now.
Yo, you know the thing Threshers need to do? Like the best Threshers I've ever seen, they always ping where they're about to throw their lantern before they throw it. That way, your cursor's there and you're ready to click it as soon as it goes down. Because otherwise, they throw 50 wards on it. And
Actually, me and Core, I don't know, we just have we play so much Thresh, so it's like a you
just know
I'm really fucking, I don't know why, but I'm really fucking fast at clicking his lanterns. So like, it just happens.
Nice.
I guess we played a lot, so like, I'm probably like the fastest lantern clicker, his lantern clicker ever. Like if you watch some games, like pretty fast. But
Specifics.
You should have a contest.
Yeah.
Core throws his lantern to every 80 carry and who can click it the fastest.
You versus Ruler.
We ready, pull up, it's over. Y'all know what's up when we roll up. Y'all know what's up when we roll up. We ready, pull up, it's over. I don't touch the wheel unless it's new. I don't touch the wheel unless it's new.